before I get, ahead of myself and get all excited, let's talk about what is the 3-to-1 ratio that is tour tempo. That is kind of the foundation of it all before we get into short game and speed.
Yeah, my dad and I are golf inventors. We did a lot of research on the golf swing, and we noticed this pattern, this consistency among tour pros of this three parts backswing to one part downswing. And so we came up with this idea of the 3-to-1 ratio. But the other piece of tour tempo is not only is it 3-to-1, and this is on full swings, but it's relatively fast. And most tour pros are about a second or less elapsed time from takeaway to impact. And actually, you and I had talked about it. I did a little research for some of these summits I've been attending, and in the last 100 majors, there was 56 different winners. 96 of those victories were 1.2 seconds or less. 75 of those victories are 1 second or less. So if you kind of just get a stopwatch out to whatever you want, it's so much faster than we all think. And the key is, and that's part of this 3-to-1 piece as well. So it's not only 3-to-1, but it's also the elapsed time. And you mentioned it earlier about your business model. You got to be consistent with your golf as well. And so how do I consistently practice a good tempo? Well, the apps give you the Tour Tempo app with the tones gives you the guardrails to do that.
So we got to break that up into two parts. I want everyone to be super clear about it. So 3-to-1 means your backswing takes 3 times as long as your downswing, correct?
Correct. And a good way to think of it is, let's just talk about this thing in frames per second. Typically on the iPhone or most devices, there's 30 frames per second. You can obviously do much more, but 30 is where it makes it easy. And so if I say 21.7, that's that's obviously 3 times longer than a backswing. So the backswing's 21 frames. The downswing is 7, 24.8, 30-10. And then you've got the freaks like Bryson DeChambeau who are 18.6. And we mentioned Padraig Harrington also at 18.6. So that gives you an idea of the 3-to-1 piece of it using frames per second.
So that's 3-to-1
Yeah.
for full swing, and that's all full swing shots, whether it's a pitching wedge, 8-iron, 4-iron, driver, correct?
If you're going, I would say there's a threshold of the lead arm, higher than your shoulders, or you're swinging more than 80-85%.
Okay.
If your lead arm is maybe a little lower and you're maybe swinging 75%, then you could be hitting a 7-iron into the wind, and that would start to veer a little more towards 2-to-1.
Okay.
But for a full pitching wedge, yeah, 3-to-1, obviously with driver as well.
Perfect. So I want to just clarify that because people kind of, ask me when does it change, and we'll get into short game tempo and how that's different in a second. But so I wanted to break that part up. So again, 3-to-1, hopefully that makes super, sense for everyone. Like just let's dumb it down, because if we can get that for everyone, like everyone's game will improve. But the second part that you mentioned is the actual time elapsed, because when I read that part of the book, that's when I was like, wow, this is so true, because you guys say in the book that the average amateur is 1.5 to 3 seconds to swing the club from backswing to impact, while you just said 96 out of the last 100 major winners were about 1 second.
1.96 of the last 100, 1.2 seconds or less, and 75, and then if you subset it, 75 of those are 1 second or less. So Brooks Koepka, Tiger, once he got going, Rory, you think of all those guys with all these multiple major wins, that they're in that sort of realm. So it's pretty amazing. And think about the physics of it. If you're taking 1.5 or 2 seconds from takeaway back to impact, you're moving the club slowly.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bump that up to 1.2 seconds or 1 second, you're going to gain club head speed. And so
Yeah.
that's why so many people, when they try tour tempo, they hit the ball farther, but then they don't lose accuracy because they're not trying to kill it or anything. They're just increasing the tempo. So like you said, there's so many benefits.
Well, yeah, and it's like not only are you, like you said, you're not thinking as much, and I think that
Yeah.
that's the problem that we briefly talked about last time. But the biggest thing I hear from so many people is like, what should my swing thoughts be? I'm like, none. Like I want you to have like a setup thought, and then I just want you to swing the club. And when you're swinging it, if it takes you 3 seconds, you have time to actually consciously think, right? If you're swinging in a second, it's just like that. It's over, and that's, I think, helping the benefit of the mental game just as much as the physical. And like you said, the everyday golfer needs to hit it further. Longer distance off the tee directly correlates with lower handicaps. Average golfer is 93 miles an hour with TrackMan, right? And the PGA Tour is 115, 120. So it's like you figure, yeah, these guys are swinging it faster. They have better mechanics. but they have a better tempo, and that's how they're increasing their speed so much. So if people could just start swinging it a little bit faster, you're not going to think as much. And like you said too, you actually don't lose accuracy. I had Lou Stagner on from Arcos Golf earlier in the year, and he backed us up with all their data from Arcos, saying that when people are adding speed, a lot of times they actually straighten out or stay just as consistent because their sequencing gets better. So it's like a win-win-win.
Yeah, there's wins all across the board. I think this idea of thinking less is huge because how do you do it? And we live in the instant gratification world of YouTube and Instagram, and every student that comes to me has seen 1,000 different videos. So that just adds to the thoughts.